Hi, welcome to Promo Insiders, an ASI media podcast that covers the issues that matter most to the promotional products industry. Labor Day has passed. The days are getting shorter, and Promo's madcap holiday selling season is shifting into gear, ready to accelerate to breakneck pace in the weeks ahead. Today's podcast will be chock full of insights and information that will help distributors make this all-important time of the year a success. I'm Chris Ruvo, and today I'm joined by my ASI media colleague, editor Sarah Lavandusky. Sarah, myself, and our team have talked with a ton of suppliers for word on everything from inventory and production to hot products to sell to key markets during the holiday times. We'll be discussing all that and more. Sarah, thanks for being with me today.
Thanks, Chris. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So before we get going, if you're listening to this live, you're welcome to chime in with questions in the comment boxes, comments, whatever you like. Keep them to the PG-13 level, and we'll be able to get to them. So, Sarah, let's get going here.
Yeah, Chris, thanks. So you had an article that went out later last week, and it was about, the status of suppliers right now with Q4 coming upon us. Mm-hmm. So what are they saying about inventory and production and fulfillment times in the months ahead?
All right, so this was actually one of the happiest articles I've gotten in a while, because so much over the last few years has been tough times, right? The word from suppliers really of different levels is that inventory levels are significantly deeper than last year, and that production and fulfillment times should be improved over what we saw during last year. When I say last year, I mean last year's fourth quarter. So one of the great examples on inventory was from Sanmar. Now, you don't get bigger than Sanmar in our industry, as we well know. They're the largest supplier. Sanmar has roughly double the amount of inventory on hand heading into, or expects to have double the amount of inventory on hand heading into the fourth quarter than they did compared to last year's fourth quarter. Inventory levels are still not where they should be, or where many suppliers would like them to be on an industry-wide basis, but inventory levels have improved. So that's obviously a great thing for distributors, because it means that there should be more in stocks this season in the specific products that your clients want. There's the good news. On production and fulfillment, again, similar situation. Things are not perfect. Nobody's saying that it's better than ever, but a lot of suppliers, especially some leading suppliers, say that they've been able to hire more in a production setting. They've been able to train these new hires, and they have the staff in place to be able to fulfill orders quicker this year than they did last year. Everybody, I'm sure, remembers last year there was really a lot of hair pulling out and hand wringing when it came to production and fulfillment. Not necessarily because a supplier was slacking, but maybe they didn't have the staff levels necessary, given how tight the labor market was to produce at levels that they would expect. So the bottom line on inventory and on production and fulfillment is both are going to be improved heading into this fourth quarter compared to what they were last year. They're still not ideal in most cases, but on an industry-wide level, they are better, and that's good news for distributors. Yeah. So as we kind of give that premise or foundation, some of the big things we wanted to talk about this hour, what really matters for distributors is who can you sell those products to, right? If, hey, we have product, we're going to be able to fulfill it. So who can you sell it to, and what are some of the hot products? So to that end, we recently put out, and you really played a lead role in putting out ASI Media's 2022 gift guide. Can you tell us just a little bit about that guide, what it entails?
Yeah, I mean, we put it out every year, as you said. And this year we did kind of 4 steps to, we're calling it acing your holiday orders, because this year, as you've been mentioning, it's the busiest quarter for promo every year. But we're still facing these challenges. And so every year the mantra is order early so your clients get their first or second choice, right? Mm-hmm. This year it's more imperative than ever that orders are in early, because suppliers are going to only be able to do so much when inventory is slow to be replenished, slower than previous years. Mm-hmm. So there are going to be situations where if your client waits long enough, they're not going to get what they want. Not even second, third, or fourth, choice that they want. Things are going to be very slow. So I would say probably now is when you want to start ordering for your clients. This is the time to start really getting serious about those gift gift orders for your clients. And one of the piece of advice we give is go to your preferred suppliers, those who've come through for you that are reliable. You're saying, your article covers those suppliers that have made changes to make sure that they can meet client demand. Look to those suppliers first. But really this year, like I think in previous years, it was the 11th hour and distributors and suppliers may have been able to get something quick out the door. That's not the case this year. And I think the other thing you have to think about is if a distributor sends out items to a contract decorator, those shops are going to have bottlenecks as well with decorating because of the holidays. And then you have freight companies who everything may be on time from a supplier, but if the freight companies are overextended, which they will be, it's going to take these circuitous routes around. Things are going to get delayed. You have to allow for all of that. So this year really is the time, seriously, to order early and make sure that your clients' orders are getting filed in so that they are getting their first and second choice for the holidays.
All right. So even with those improved production times and deeper inventory levels that we talked about, things are still not perfect. We can't go back to relying on everything last minute. There still needs to be that forethought and planning if you want to get the items that you want. Now, we should mention too, I think, about the gift guide that it's available at asicentral.com/news. There's a profile of, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, 6 or 7 different markets and that are going to be hot to sell to. And then there's a breakdown of products that would be specific good sellers in those markets. So maybe take us through a couple of those markets. What markets figure to provide some of the most fertile ground for promo sales in this Q4 and why?
Yeah, I think the common theme is really, it is every year, but I think really this year, again, it's thanking people for a job well done, especially in those industries where, staffing shortages really took a toll. People were coming in extra hours. They were really overextended on their working hours. They were doing the job of 2 or 3 people. Really rewarding people for the good work that they did this year is going to be important. So for sure, a few of the industries that we targeted are education, which based on SOI data is our largest market for promo again. Also healthcare and hospitality. Again, thanking those hardworking employees who kept showing up and serving people when those shortages hit like virtually every industry. But yeah, it's been, I think really those industries, you can really look to those that have had workers that are on their feet all day, and they're really going to appreciate gifts from grateful employers.
That's a great point. One of the other markets that stood out for me too was contractors. I know in some ways the housing market has cooled, but there's been so much building going on and so much competition for skilled labor, right, over the last year or so. That seems to be another market where they could be looking to reward and thank around the holidays, given the competition for that skilled labor. Another one that stood out to me too, and this I was almost a little surprised to see this on there, but when you think of how things have changed over the last year, a couple years, it was nonprofits. Now we know nonprofits sometimes have limited budgets, but when you're maybe paying people a little bit less, as nonprofits tend to do compared to the private for-profit enterprises, you want maybe other ways to thank people and show them that they're cared for, and that seems to be just a great way to do that is through a thoughtful, branded, personalized gift. So another great one there. So specifically, what I really liked about the gift guide was that it broke down to like, hey, not only here's a great market, but here's some products that would be good for this market. So based on some of those markets that you just discussed, what might be a good product or two? Maybe start with education or whichever one you prefer.
Yeah, I think for education, I think teachers like classroom items. They like desk decor that they can show off. They like things that they can use to get to work, like messenger bags for their professional items. I think even home goods, like we feature some food gifts, high-end blankets for relaxing after long days, putting your feet up. I think people appreciate that. For healthcare, I was just at the hospital yesterday visiting somebody. I saw every single nurse that walked by had a piece of drinkware, and they had it like holding it or on their bag or whatever. Drinkware is huge, and if it can keep water cold all day for a long shift, or hot coffee or tea hot for a long shift, that's perfect. They really appreciate that kind of thing that they can use on the job. And food gifts, like we have a taco kit that they can take home and then make for themselves and their families after a long day. People appreciate like an easy dinner to put together real quick. And then I think for hospitality, people on their feet all day serving people, especially when, there was a lot of staffing shortages. I think trophies just a trophy, a personalized trophy they can display at their home or in their office is really good. And then fresh uniform accessories for the new year, like ties and scarves. I think
Okay.
make a nice gift for people.
Okay. That's yeah, it's really interesting stuff. I like personally I love the I love any, and I think that this has a pan market or pan industry appeal, is that when you get that kitted box sent to your home, and it's branded in a nice way, and it's got maybe a seasonal theme, and then there's a couple different things in it, and they're all somewhat useful, but there may be things I could use around the home, or things that are maybe particular to me given my profession or whatever. That seems like such a great way to go, because you've created an experience with the unboxing. You've created some visual eye candy with the nice box and the fact that multiple things are packaged nicely, and then you've provided them with something practical, whether it be drinkware, a nice blanket for the holidays, things of that nature. So yeah, but the point is that there's a lot of options out there, and there's a lot of markets that are buying, and it's just a matter of narrowing it down and really making it tailoring it to the particular recipients. Was that a fair way to characterize it?
Yeah, yeah, and for sure, like making sure that you're being proactive and getting on it like now.
Okay, yeah,
This is the
okay.
time.
Right.
For
That
sure.
was a good segue, because I think the next thing we were going to talk about, and this is something you certainly emphasized earlier, is selling strategies and best practices, right, for distributors heading into the fourth quarter. And you touched on this extensively in your article. I did to a lesser extent in mine, but I think we came to a lot of the same conclusions. Number one, you have to order early. Like the ordering early puts you in such a pole position to get your client the specific products that they want at the levels that they want them. Um, Even with inventory being deeper, that can still be a challenge, given that demand is expected to be high this fourth quarter, right? Another big one is you want to how can I put it? Present options. And everybody I think has been doing that already. But you want to educate your clients about, hey, you've heard about this at the supermarket, at the box store, at Amazon. There's shortages and things. Things may not be available to the level that you're used to. Given that, here's your first choice product, but here's some others that you might like as well, just in case we can't get specifically what you want in the totals that you want for this project. And if you talk to those, you work with trusted suppliers who are honest, who have a good beat on their own inventory situation, preferably even ones who have online tools you can use to check on inventory, you should be able to give clients multiple options for products that they would actually be able to get, because there is inventory for them. So those are just, I think, some of the best practices that you should observe going into every holiday gift time sale. Just order early, educate clients about the situation on inventory and fulfillment, and then present options. I know, Sarah, I know you had others too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, like you're saying, to have options. Make sure you have several options for them to pick from. And I think the other thing is, you have to really monitor inventory, and that's because it disappears so quickly. Like one of the distributors said in the article, we had this specific shirt that a client wanted, and it was like a specific hand, a specific fit, like very, very, very specific. And everything looked good, except that every supplier we went to get this shirt from you, and then because of inventory shortage, you have to go to multiple suppliers, right? So every supplier we went to had everything except medium, which of course is the most popular size.
Right.
So they ended up they could get hundreds in the other sizes, but they ended up having to go with another shirt because they didn't have mediums.
Okay.
So it's kind of, and that can disappear. You can put the PO in, and the inventory can be gone within a few minutes.
That's
if
true.
comes in, that's it. So you really have to not only monitor the inventory, but also monitor the order all the way till it's in your client's hands. Because you think it's on the truck headed for your client, and it's sitting in a warehouse somewhere for several days or a few weeks.
Yeah,
so,
and that's a consequence too, I think, of like having to use multiple shippers sometimes, or ship from multiple different warehouses, because the inventory, even if you have that, even if in totality you have the inventory, it might be stationed in different places, right?
Totally. Yeah. Actually, Sanmar told me that they're really trying to make sure that they have plenty of inventory at each distribution center. So it's not like, oh, I'm in Jersey, but I have to get items from, out on the West Coast, like in Washington, right? Like they're making sure that they have plenty of inventory at every center. So they're like a Jersey person isn't waiting for stuff coming in from Washington, which just, just takes more time.
Nightmare.
So that's another thing that suppliers are doing, is making sure they have plenty of inventory in every single location.
All right. We had a comment come in. Daryl Andre. Sorry if I pronounced the last name wrong. Just agreeing that blankets are always an awesome option for the holiday, and you can never have too many. And I totally agree, because we seem to get a few every year, and then we have a collection. They get used. They get multiple children. They get put on their beds. They get used. We sit outside on chilly mornings, stuff like that. So total agreement with that one. So Sarah, just before we move on, just any other strategies, tips, best practices that that distributors should follow based on your reporting?
Yeah, and I would say one of the other things, and I think this is really hard for sales reps to do, is it's to say we can't do that at this point in the game. And I think it's so, because I know that they want to help their client any way that they can. But one of the key things is, don't spin your wheels and say that you can make it happen when something is, a custom item in October or November is probably not going to be feasible. So it's worse to say, yes, we can make it happen, and then things fall through, than to say, look, it's just too late in the season. We really recommend that you choose something else that's like ready made and ready to go. And we can talk about a custom project maybe in the new year. But right now, this is not, like, we just can't do that. Like, really focus on what's feasible and be honest with your clients. They appreciate that. Just being honest at the beginning.
Yeah, I think there can be a tendency sometimes to promise something because you just so badly want to say yes, because if you're afraid that if you say no, that they're gonna take their business elsewhere potentially. But if something truly is not achievable, and you don't bait and switch, right? Don't say, yeah, I could do it, and then after the fact say, well, it turns out I really can't, but I can do this. Now they're annoyed at you because you promised them something and you under delivered, right? It's the proverbial. So you want to maybe under promise and over deliver, as the saying goes. And honesty is the best policy. If you've truly done your work on the sourcing end, and after talking to maybe multiple vendors, that just a certain desired custom job, or certain any job, just isn't realistic given timeframes or whatever the issues might be, convey that, just like call attention to it, right? And then move on. So we had a comment come in here. Technology item. This is from Mary Fries, that technology items, so like wireless chargers, make working anywhere easier. I think these will be increasingly appreciated. And boy, I totally agree. I think tech items in general and are the way to go. And things that I think we mentioned earlier, Mary, things on that are practical, that people could actually use, or and that look attractive, are especially welcomed, and those would fit the bill for that, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, in your article, Chris, last week, you talked about the current state of, like, the supply chain, inflationary pressures on suppliers, pricing. What is the situation right now, and what is that going to mean for the fourth quarter?
Okay, so the good news on supply chain is, in terms of fourth quarter, is that a lot of important, leading, proactive, smart suppliers knew that supply chain problems weren't going anywhere. And earlier in the year, they really front loaded their ordering. Meaning they started bringing a lot more product, from their overseas factories into their domestic warehouses, more than they would have, say, in past, what we might call normal or pre-pandemic years. So they were kind of anticipating it would take longer for things to get here because of various supply chain hiccups. But they knew they needed a lot of stuff on hand, especially for the second half of the year and the fourth quarter. So many have indeed stocked up. I'll give you one example. And I'm not saying that everybody is in this position and that everybody did that. So of course you have to check with each individual supplier, but I am saying that a lot of the leading suppliers I've talked to have done this. And the one example that sticks out for me is PCNA. They're carrying they have their lowest out of stock ever. This is according to their to C-suiters there, that this is their lowest out of stock that they've ever had, and that their inventory levels are exceeding what they were seeing in 2019. So they've beefed up in a big way. Supply chain more broadly, though, and this could become a whole topic itself, but like I'll say, is there's still continued issues. There's still problems with factories shutting down in China due to COVID, and recently we're recording this in early September. In August, there was all kinds of heat wave and drought there. That's causing impacts. There's increased costs for raw materials, for supplies, for labor, things of that nature. That all contributes to a higher bottom line or higher costs for suppliers that can, potentially drive up pricing on promo products. There, on the supply chain front, some things have gotten better in some areas. So there's less congestion on West Coast ports right now, but now there's more congestion on East Coast and Gulf Coast ports. Hey, why does that matter to the promotion products industry? Because if there's port congestion and you can't get your products off the ship and into a truck and truck to your warehouse, it makes it harder to replenish inventory. It also makes it more expensive. So the bottom line is that suppliers are still dealing with really many supply chain issues, but they're trying to mitigate that with more proactive ordering, carrying more inventory on hand, and being more strategic about what they order. Now, one of the positive notes that I learned in doing this reporting is that there's some in our industry who feel that the worst of the inflationary pressures are starting to pass. There's some signs in the bigger economy that may be the case too. Inflation was still ridiculous in July, which was the most recent month that we had available. I think it was 8.5%, but that's down a little bit. There's a sense that that with the economy cooling a little bit, and that with interest rates going up, various other factors, that we may have seen the peak in inflation, and then it may start to actually start to go the other way, where those pressures go backwards. What does that mean for promo? Well, you would like it to ultimately translate into price decreases on products down the line. Jury's out on whether that's going to happen. Okay. But what it may mean is that once suppliers sell through the stock that they purchased at these higher prices under great inflationary pressures, that once they can start purchasing product and making things and importing at slightly lower rates, that does then translate into price tags that are lower for the industry. And that's potentially good for distributors, because if the end client is used to buying something at a certain level, but you're potentially paying less for it, there's maybe chance to expand margins a little bit there within reason. You can't rip people off, of course, but like there's chance for margin expansion here. So that's what I would say is the kind of the long-winded beat on pricing, inflation, and supply chain at the moment.
Yeah, I think it really remains to be seen. Like, things change so quickly, and I think we reported on Gift Guide in like July or August, so people were kind of giving their best guess based on like historically what's been going on. But unless the challenges all like resolve themselves in the next like month, which didn't happen, obviously, they were pretty sure that Q4 is always busy, but it's going to be even busier this year, and it's going to be even a little more stressful. So it just behooves end clients get their orders in early for distributors and suppliers to help them get their orders in.
Yeah, good final thoughts there. I would say too, for folks to not be discouraged. Listen, I really hope I'm right, because my sense is that things are not going to be as bad as last year. Like, yes, we are still in an altered marketplace. It's not 2019, 2018. But I don't think that we're facing the same direness of like lack of products and just like create clients who just weren't aware of how bad supply chain issues were. I think end clients are more aware of it. I think distributors are more aware of it. So they're being more proactive about how they're going to handle this holiday season. Suppliers, I know for a fact, good ones, have been more proactive about it with their stocking up, with their trying to bring their labor levels up to be able to meet demand. So even though it's like what's the takeaway? It's like the forecast isn't maybe for a sunny day in terms of how everything's going to go, but it's not going to pour. You know what I'm saying? It's going to maybe just be overcast. There's going to be challenges, but I don't think that they'll be as severe as they were last year. And I think that should be an encouraging thing for the industry. And then of course nobody should feel any complacency with that though either.
Right. Yeah. And that's how we conclude the article for the gift guide. It's like, the good thing, like you're saying, is that this year end buyers understand, they understand inflation, they understand product shortages, and they understand delays in delivery. They've experienced it everywhere else. They're not surprised that they're going to experience it here too. So they're understanding.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody, thank you for sticking with us to the end. And you can learn more at asicentral.com/news. Check out our 2022 gift guide and check out our report on where things stand with inventory and production fulfillment if you want all the nitty gritty details. Chris Ruvo and Sarah Lewandowski for ASI Media. Thanks for listening.